welcome to the No DQ live recap of AEW Dynamite for January the 20th, 2021. A very historical day in the United States with Joe Biden taking the office of President of the United States. And surely the news coverage had an effect on viewership for AEW and NXT tonight, but we're here to talk about the shows for those of you that want your wrestling fix and want to know about AEW and a little bit of NXT. You've come to the right place. I will discuss a little bit of NXT at the end of the video, but for now, let's get to Dynamite. We kicked off Dynamite. It was a celebration of -1's birthday. -1, the son of Brody Lee. There was a birthday cake for him, and you had the Dark Order come to the stage. They sang a birthday song for -1, and then Luther and Serpentico interrupted. Luther cut a promo and just this mean bad guy talking about how he doesn't care about -1's birthday, how AEW is becoming a daycare center, and they don't like children, they don't like -1. They are going to ruin his birthday. And that's when a big fight broke out. TH2 came down, and then Adam Page arrived. Adam Page ran off the stage and did a dive onto all the bad guys, and then we had our 8-man tag team match. And JR praised Page, he praised John Silver, calling them two rising stars in the AEW universe. That's right, the AEW universe was a term used by JR on this show. Anyways, Page did his standard offense, the top rope moonsault onto everybody to the outside of the ring. And then Page powerbombed Evans over the barricade onto a bunch of the wrestlers at ringside. Then we had -1 use a kendo stick on Luther. Luther was going to try and powerbomb Colt Cabana through the table with the cake, but -1 used the kendo stick, and we had Luther being slammed face first into the cake. So, of course, the cake got ruined. As you would expect on a wrestling show, the announcers even teased that it would happen. Just like a wedding, things always go wrong whenever there's a cake. Somebody always goes through the cake. And the good guys worked together, and they managed to pin Serpentico. After the match, -1 grabbed the kendo stick and hit Serpentico with the stick and said that his birthday was actually 3 days ago, and they're a bunch of idiots for trying to crash the party. And then we had -1 grab the papers just like what Brody Lee would do and throw the papers at Serpentico. And then after the match, things got serious. It was all about the Adam Page situation and if he was going to join the Dark Order or not. Adam Page got the mic and said he can't. And right after he said he can't, confetti went out, and on the big screen, there was a message that said, he said yes. So Dark Order prematurely put up the big celebration decorations and the message on the screen. Page actually said no and said that he's done the group thing before and it just didn't work for him. And he apologized and took his leave. The Dark Order, they were very sad that Adam Page did not join the group. So, my thoughts on the segment, I think it's awesome what AEW is doing for Brody Lee Jr., -1, and he's clearly having a great time. But to put this on Dynamite on national television, I'm wondering if maybe enough is enough at this point. And last week when Robbie Vice criticized it, I was very much against it. I thought, you know what, they're doing a cool thing for the kid, but if this keeps going on, I'm feeling like it's not going to be good for AEW long term, because it just comes off as amateur hour. I mean, it's all fun and it's really cool to do for Brody Lee Jr., but this is the kind of stuff that should probably be in a dark match segment. And, you know, they do stuff on AEW Dark, and that might be pushing it too, although really it's the core audience that's watching Dark. But, you know, these kind of things are usually done when the cameras are not rolling. Like WWE, when there were crowds, you know, after the show, they would do things with kids and that sort of thing. So I feel like they probably should back off on doing these segments, especially on TNT. But, you know, a lot of people like it. The AEW core audience loves it. So I don't know. I just think it's pretty over the top. And Maud W says by December they will make him the champion. Caleb Jacobs says he likes it. So there you go. MVP Kev says I agree. Nick Lavin says John Silver is terrible. LOL, cannot take him seriously. Psycho Jet Black with a $2 super chat says, at least it's not Vince interviewing Mrs. Pillman. Well, that's very true. I mean, WWE has done some very questionable things over the years. And again, it's a nice gesture, but I'm starting to wonder if enough is enough, and, you know, let Brody Lee go to school and do his thing and let him be backstage and hang out with the wrestlers and whatnot. But putting this stuff on TV, I think, might be a bit too much. Backstage, we had MJF and Chris Jericho cutting a promo. MJF made fun of Marvez for having bad breath, and basically they vowed to become the next tag team champions and represent Inner Circle in the tag division, and said the match will ultimately bring everybody closer together. We had Tony Schiavone introducing Sting, who was wearing a Brody Lee tribute shirt, and Darby Allin came to the ring, and Sting basically praised Darby, said that he did not want to interrupt the match from last week, Darby Allin versus Brian Cage, but wanted to make sure that things were fair. And Sting said that he sees a lot of things in Darby that remind him of him. We quickly had Taz interrupt this segment. Team Taz backstage said that Sting and Darby fight dirty, and if that's how they want to go, Team Taz is willing to fight in the streets. Darby responded to this by saying, be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it. I guess maybe we're going to get some kind of fight in the streets, a cinematic match, and this is how we'll get Sting in action, Sting and Darby against Team Taz. I mean, that's what it appears to be the direction, but who knows? We had footage shown from earlier in the day of the Young Bucks arriving at the home of Kenny Omega to have a meeting with him, and Alex Marvez was there. Omega was not home, though. Don Callis was there. However, they could not find him at first. The Young Bucks walked into the living room, and they saw a painting. It was a painting of Kenny Omega and Don Callis. Both were shirtless. And, yeah, interesting painting. An oil painting of Omega and Don Callis. Don Callis looked like one of those WBF bodybuilders. We had Callis finally arrive and reveal that Kenny Omega was unable to attend. He was busy with something else. The Bucks were upset about this. They said they've been trying to call, and Don wanted some privacy. So we had Alex Marvez escorted to the dungeon. Kenny Omega has a dungeon. And then the cameraman was also escorted. So the camera was put on the ground, and Don Callis chatted with the Bucks. Apparently, I'm not sure what the deal was here, if Callis did not know the camera was still rolling, which was pretty stupid of him. But yeah, the camera was still on the ground, but recording and we saw everything that happened here, Callis tried to basically bribe the Bucks, give them some money. He wrote a check for them, and Matt was like, they made that much money last week, you know, from all the merchandise sales. So Callis, he wrote a new check, and Matt was still angry, saying that Callis cannot buy out a 12-year friendship, whatever it was, and then added that Callis's check, it's from Impact, so it's probably not good anyways. Ouch, nice little dig there. But Callis was starting to get upset because the Bucks were angry, so he started backing away, and apparently he tripped over the camera. That's what it looked like. He fell backwards and it went to black. He tripped, so man, that must be a really cheap camera to go out of commission that easily. So this segment was a bit rough. Although Nick Glavin says the segment was funny, Matt's acting, both Bucks are not very good actors, but Matt in particular, his acting is not good. He is one of the best athletes in the world in wrestling, but acting, not so good in my opinion. The painting thing was weird too. I guess it's to get heel heat, and Omega and Callis are so close. You know, they have oil paintings with themselves shirtless. I don't know. But yeah, the whole segment was really strange for me. And Caleb Jacobs says the Bucks are obviously going to turn face, the Good Brothers versus the Young Bucks. Well, I did not realize they ever turned heel. That's the thing. But I mean, who knows at this point? Nick Glavin says, one of my criticisms of AEW is I find they don't finish a segment or match. It either gets interrupted often by someone who a lot of best down moments in the run of the show. We had Peter Avalon, who's now known as Pretty Peter Avalon, against Cody. Cody was trying to beat him in less than a minute. He hit a crossroads right off the bat, and Jade Cargill quickly came down to the ringside area to distract Cody, which worked. Stupid babyface. Peter hit a low blow when the referee wasn't looking, and then went after the knee. And then eventually Cody came back, hit a cutter, put on a figure four, and then slapped Peter, and apparently that was enough because Peter did not want his pretty face being messed up, so he tapped out to Cody. Match was kind of pointless because AEW is not going to push Peter Avalon, and clearly this was all comedy because he tapped out to a slap, so it really did nothing to elevate him. So yeah, it was kind of a waste of time. I guess it advances whatever the storyline is with Cody and Jade Cargill and Shaq. Apparently next week Cody will finally, you know, after a month or two, will respond to Shaq's comments. But yeah, they're moving at a snail's pace with this. Like, shouldn't he respond like the next week? So yeah, wasn't big on this segment. Kind of felt like time filler, but then again, quite a bit of this show felt like time filler. And I wonder if it had something to do with the inauguration and all that going on with the news channels. But yeah, felt like, you know, something you could have easily just skipped and not really missed anything. We had FTR backstage with Tully Blanchard. They were cutting a promo. They were interrupted by the Lucha Express. And basically, Harwood said he'll face Jungle Boy next week. And Luchasaurus added that he's going to make sure nobody gets involved in the match. There's no shenanigans. We'll see about that. I still think like Luchasaurus should be doing way more in AEW. Like he just seems like he's kind of just a bit player. He's back there standing around and doesn't really do much because I feel like they don't want to job him out, you know, but at the same time they don't want to push him. So he's just kind of there. And I think they should be doing way more with Luchasaurus. But I say this every week. We had a newcomer, but apparently he's been wrestling on Dark. I haven't been watching Dark in quite some time. Nick Camarato. Best way to describe him, he he's like a mix. Like if Bruiser Brody and Hercules had a kid, it would be Nick Comoroto. The guy looks really physically impressive. Like, this is the first time I've seen him, and my thought was, this guy should be pushed. Like, he looks like a star. He towered over Moxley, and Moxley was, you know, a big WWE star. I think this guy has some real potential. So we had him in a match with Moxley, and it was basically a showcase match for Moxley. Comoroto got a little bit of offense, but Moxley picked up the win fairly easily. Actually won by submission, got him in a sleeper and got him down to the mat, and that was the end for this young up-and-comer. After the match was over, Moxley got on the mic, talked about all the different factions, and said it's hard to keep track who was from where, but he said the one positive is that it's more people for him to beat up and hurt, and Kenny has made things more interesting. He said it's a bigger climb to the mountain now, but he said that just makes it even sweeter at the top. Mr. Yuck says he was in MLW. All right, well, I think the guy has potential. This is the first time I saw him. Gary says this kid looks amazing. Very intrigued with him going forward. Hopefully AEW signs him soon. Mo Camera, the party pooper, says, you shouldn't get pushed because of your muscles. This is pro wrestling. You should get pushed because of talent, not how over you are. Well, I want to see larger-than-life superstars. That's what I grew up on. I want to see guys that look like they could beat anybody in a fight. Like, part of watching wrestling is being able to suspend disbelief. So if you have small guys running around, it's hard to suspend disbelief. But when you see a guy who looks physically intimidating beating up people, you can believe that. You can suspend disbelief. But hey, that's just my opinion. And wrestling is very subjective. Everybody has their own opinion on it, what they like, what they don't like. But I want to be able to suspend disbelief. When I see a guy like Nick Comoroto, I see somebody who would win fights if it was real. And yes, I do agree, Mo Camera. Look at Jinder Mahal. He has muscles, but he sucks. That's a whole different argument. Jinder Mahal, I think, could have been a star if, when he was brought back in 2016, he was pushed right away. The problem was Jinder Mahal came back with a new body, but they still booked him as an opening match guy. And then all of a sudden they went from 0 to 100 and made him world champion. But I've argued that many times before. Anybody who's followed the channel for a while knows what I've said about Jinder Mahal. But yeah, if it was me, I would have brought back Jinder Mahal and pushed him right away with that new body and let him just be himself instead of doing the whole Maharaja thing. The promo he cut on Talking Smack before he won the title, I always bring that up. That was the Jinder Mahal I wanted to see. Anyways, we're sidetracking here. Let's get back to AEW. We had Eddie Kingston cutting a promo, and he was confronted by Lance Archer. They got a match set up for next week. We had Kenny Omega meeting with Don Callis backstage, and Don's face was all busted up, black eye, and he talked about how he just had a little accident. Apparently, Kenny did not see the footage, which was broadcast nationwide, and Marvez came into the room and was wondering if Nick and Matt did something to him, and Don Callis was freaking out about this. Again, like, we all saw the footage. It looked like he tripped over the camera, but I don't know. We had Matt Sydal and Top Flight versus Matt Hardy and Private Party. Private Party coming off a win on Impact Wrestling, which I did watch those segments. They appeared with Matt and won a tag team match with a little assistance from Jerry Lynn, who's an AEW official. There was a handshake at the start of this match, but Private Party started showing some more aggression as the match went on. There was one point, one of the Top Flight guys, they were doing a whole bunch of different moves, and one of the guys attempted to do a standing moonsault and damn near almost broke his neck. So yeah, maybe slow down a little bit. Jim Ross, he was getting salty during this match. I'm not sure if it was because he wasn't enjoying the match or the fact that people were just in the ring and there were no tags and there was confusion about who the legal man was. But JR seemed to be frustrated with his commentary during this match. Hardy ended up taking out all three guys and went for a pin on all three of them, but they all kicked out. And then we had Isaiah Cassidy using a chair. When the referee wasn't looking, he used a chair. And Mark Quinn was at first a little surprised by this, but then smiled and hit a shooting star press, picked up the victory. So, yeah, the heel turn of Private Party was more defined in this match. And looks like they're on board with Matt Hardy as heels. But I have to say, I'm not the biggest fan of the big money Matt gimmick. I just don't really find it that intriguing. Like, I really don't want to boo Matt Hardy at this stage of the game. You know, he's one of those veterans who's been around for so long and we've seen him through thick and thin. And it's just kind of a generic gimmick. He did it before. He did it before he became Broken Matt, and it really wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't until he did Broken Matt that his career saw a renaissance. So I feel like he's almost regressing back to something that did not work before instead of being innovative and doing something new with his character. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this gimmick. So yeah, that's the answer to the question, Nick, in the chat room. Don't really like it too much. And then afterwards, the heel attack continued. Private Party attacked Seidel in Top Flight, and Matt hit a couple of Twist of Fates. And Biblical Adrian says he did that gimmick in ROH and TNA. Yeah, I know TNA. That was what he was doing before he became Broken Matt, and I wasn't a fan of it then. It was the Broken Matt thing that sold me on him again. And I was like, well, Matt Hardy still has something to offer. Curtis Butler says, Big Money Matt is all over BTE. Well, there you go. Everybody's always like, oh, this happened on Dark, this happened on BTE. And my response is always, if you want to grow your audience, you have to do these storylines on your main show and explain the storylines to people watching the main shows. Not everybody is going to be watching Dark and watching BTE constantly and like, oh, I get what this is all about. Like, you got to explain it to the people that are just watching Dynamite. And AEW was doing all right with that for a while, but now you got like 14 matches on Dynamite and, you know, they expect people to watch all this stuff. And, you know, I cover this stuff for a living and I'm not even watching it. So, yeah, I think they got a little bit of a problem because I think they have so many people under contract now that it's hard to focus on a group of people. You got to try to get everybody on the show. And then it's like 1 week somebody gets some TV time and then the next week they don't. So it's kind of becoming like WWE in a way where there's just too many people on the roster and you can't focus on everybody. Mike B says, hey, Aaron, awesome stream on Twitch last night. Well, thank you for that. And again, if you guys missed it, No DQ is now on Twitch. I did a video with a No DQ CAW topic talking about the history of the video game league and showed the bragging rights event from 2008. So if you're interested in checking that out, follow No DQ on Twitch, twitch.tv, I believe, /NoDQ, DOTCOM. Anyways, back to Dynamite. We had MJF going into the Inner Circle's locker room and things got a little bit heated with everyone. And MJF said he just wants to have the family succeed. He wants to do what is best for the group. And they just want to get the match out of the way and then get back to everybody loving each other and working together. We had Layla Hirsch versus Penelope Ford. It was originally supposed to be Layla Hirsch versus Nyla Rose, but Rose pulled out of the show due to COVID-19 exposure. And right at the 9:30 spot, every week the women's match is always in that same spot. Like, can't they ever open the show, or heaven forbid main event? I guess not. Penelope had Miro and the Butler, Charles, who of course is Chuck Taylor, now Charles the Butler. And of course, Kip Sabian was out there. Layla Hirsch was out on the outside of the ring yelling at Kip Sabian, got kicked by Penelope Ford, so stupid babyface getting distracted. Orange Cassidy was watching in the crowd, and Layla went up on top and did a dive to the outside, going after Kip and Charles, once again being distracted, and they're just on the outside standing there waiting for the catch. And then Penelope took advantage. As soon as Layla got back in the ring, Penelope hit her with a kick and went for the cover. And then Kip grabbed the foot of Layla so she could not kick out. But it kind of looked weird. It looked like he was putting her foot on the rope. And even Tony Schiavone seemed to be confused by the finish here. So a little bit sloppy how this went down. And yeah, I guess the idea was to hold the foot down, kind of like what Bobby Heenan would do. But yeah, it kind of looked awkward. And after the match was over, Miro brought Charles into the ring and instructed him to tell Orange Cassidy that Miro is now Charles's best friend. Charles hesitated for a bit, but then finally said that Miro is his new best friend. And we do have the wedding in 2 weeks, and I don't really care about it. Backstage, we had Penta being attacked by Omega and the Good Brothers, being choked out with a cable. And then we had some announcements for next week's show. Cody will be responding to Shaq, as I mentioned, like a month after the fact. There's a battle royal next week, or actually at Beach Break, which is in 2 weeks, to determine who will get the match at Revolution for the tag team titles. And then there's also going to be a women's eliminator tournament, because we don't have enough tournaments in wrestling right now. Let's just add another one onto the pile. I'm cool with the tournament once a year, but now I feel like both promotions are just doing tournaments in and out throughout the entire year. But yeah, we got another tournament coming up. Apparently, we're going to have some of the Japanese talents involved because they had a U.S. flag and a Japanese flag. And then they announced that at Beach Break, the main event will be Jon Moxley, Pac, and Rey Fenix against the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega. I guess Omega and Good Brothers will need to do some more damage to thin the field. And Gary says, I'll say this, the announcement that AEW has pulled really makes me intrigued in the women's division for once. A 16-women tournament for the women's championship is a very great move. I guess we'll see. I'm not sure that's the way that you build new stars, but maybe it'll work out. I mean, the Mae Young Classic worked well for WWE. Maybe it'll work for AEW. I'm just tired of tournaments, man. I think it's played out. We just had a tournament with the guys a couple months ago in AEW. So if they did it once a year, it'd be fine. But we got 2 in AEW or 3 in AEW plus the 3 in WWE every year. It's a bit much. We had our main event, the Inner Circle, in a 3-way tag team match. Jericho and MJF had a merged theme song. Like a remix of their 2 themes together. And Sammy got the best of Jericho at first, showboated a little bit, but then Jericho tried to cheat with the bat, and Hager hit him with a big boot, and then MJF tried to use the Dynamite Diamond Ring, but Hager punched MJF right in the face, and everything started to break down, and Sammy hit the go to hell on Jericho, and then Wardlow got on the apron. He was knocked off the apron, but then MJF took advantage of that and rolled up Sammy to pick up the win, and then Dynamite just abruptly went off the air. Like, pretty much right when the match ended, they went off the air. So it kind of felt like Raw with the time running out at the last minute here. So this Dynamite was not that good, in my opinion. One of the weaker Dynamites. I mean, maybe the worst Dynamite. It wasn't a bad show, but I wouldn't even say it was a good show. It was just okay. So I'm going to give this show a C-. It felt like a skippable show. Like, it felt okay. There was no match on this show that was like blow away, good to great. You know, all the matches were okay. Couple good ones, but yeah, I wasn't really sold on a lot of the storylines. So yeah, not AEW's best effort this week. But I did see the Fight Pit, and I will say this. The Fight Pit was better than anything on AEW. Easily. Fight Pit was easily the best thing on either show this week. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. Seeing a lot of C's for the show in the chat room. Mohammed with a C-, Lewis and CC Drink with a C, Ma W with a C-, and Biblical Adrian with a C-, and MVP Kev with a C- as well. So a lot of people agree with me. Nick Lavin with a $7 super chat. Thank you. Nick says, I found with tonight's show, AEW, they're starting to show their bad areas. I do like AEW, but tonight was their worst show yet. Wow. C+ from Nick Lavin. I would say Raw was better than AEW this week. So, you know, it wasn't the best effort from AEW when I think Raw was a better show. And Raw had quite a few botches and some not so great things on the show. And Jorge with a C- says Jericho with the worst lion salt. Yeah, that lion salt wasn't good either. Jericho trying to be all quick with the young guys, and yeah, he didn't quite get that lion salt too good. Gary says this show was a little off balance this evening for sure, but the same can be said for NXT because 2 upsets in the Dusty Classic was very overkill. To me, it's not a good start for the tourney, C+. All right, well, let's talk about that because it's funny you mentioned that, Gary, because in my notes here for NXT, the 2 things that stood out, the Fight Pit and then 2 of the match results from the Dusty tournaments. The first was from the men. So Lucha House Party beat Imperium. I feel so bad for Imperium because they were like this badass faction, and now they're losing to the guys on Raw. And I feel bad for Lucha House Party too because they're talented guys, but let's be real here. What have they done lately in WWE? I mean, they're 2 of the guys that run around chasing R-Truth for the 24/7 title. Like, nobody takes them seriously now, and they're beating Imperium. I mean, I guess it's pretty obvious Imperium will not be going to the main roster, but still, like, yeah, when you're losing to Lucha House Party, it's a rough time. And same thing with Breezango. Like, you know, they're back in NXT, but how can anybody take them serious again? And then the other upset victory, Casey Catanero and Caden Carter defeated Tony Storm and Mercedes Martinez, considered to be a big upset, which I like Casey Catanero. I always thought that there was potential with her. You know, she was impressive in that Royal Rumble appearance. So I'm happy for them, although Caden Carter has basically just been enhancement talent in NXT. So yeah, 2 upsets in one night. I would agree that that's overkill. You know, it would make sense to do one and not the other. If I was going to do one and not the other, I would have Imperium beat Lucha House Party, that's for sure. And Gary says NXT gets a C+ as well. Sorry. Yeah, and people in the chat room, Nick Lavin's like, hold on, Lucha House Party beat Imperium? And indeed they did. And Mo Cameron with a $7 super chat says, how come Riddle gives me doofus vibes from Scary Movie? All he needs is a vacuum cleaner to complete his gimmick. I mean, that very well could be the inspiration. And it would be vintage WWE to be like 20 years behind the times. You know, that's what they do. Or sometimes 30 years behind the times. So anyways, the main event was the fight pit, and the fight pit was awesome. And going back earlier to suspension of disbelief, AEW had too much goofiness on it. Like the -1 stuff, again, it's so over the top and goofy. The fight pit felt like a real fight. Like I'm watching this and I really feel like these guys are actually having a fight against each other. And to me, that's good pro wrestling when you got two guys in there just beating the crap out of each other and having this brutal, intense fight. But you know deep down it's entertainment and they're not really hurting each other, which for me adds to the entertainment. So anyways, Tomasa Champa and Timothy Thatcher, they started on the top of the structure and Champa was trying to throw Thatcher over the top of the cage to the outside, which in the rules you can only win inside the structure. Champa dominated for a while, and then after the commercial break, they were back down in the ring, in the pit, and that's when Thatcher got the upper hand. They went back and forth. They threw each other into the cage, exchanged some submission holds. Champa used a low blow, hit his DDT, but then Thatcher somehow managed to get up at the count of 9, and then Champa hit the fairy tale ending, went for submission, but Thatcher somehow managed to power up and get to his feet. He slammed Champa into the cage, and then while they were up against the cage, Thatcher got on this submission as he's standing up with Champa on his shoulders, and Champa tapped out. I love the finish here with the standing submission. I thought that was great. And then afterwards, another cool moment here is Thatcher actually gave Champa some props. So there was like a mutual show of respect between the two of them. No handshake or anything, just some props from Thatcher. And I liked that, that Champa brought his A game and they had a hell of a fight. So I thought the ending was great. It felt like a big time match, felt like a pay-per-view quality match. Easily the best thing of either night. So if I recommend anything from either show this week, check out that fight pit match. And Thatcher is 2-0 in the fight pit. So I kind of like how it's his specialty. And he's undefeated in the fight pit. So I thought that was really well done. Fight pit was great. Would absolutely recommend checking out. And Gary says Thatcher and Champa next NXT Tag Team Champions. Interesting. I mean, that would be interesting to see them as a team. And Nick Lavin's like, they can't shake hands, COVID. Well, Daniel Bryan shook Nakamura's hand, but I know you're joking anyways because they're touching each other constantly. Johnny Boy with a $5 super chat says, would you like to see The Fiend and Alexa Bliss versus Triple H and Stephanie McMahon at WrestleMania? You can have Triple H start acting weird after he vanished. Answer after the video. I'll answer that here in just a second. Curtis Butler says the fight pit should be a once-in-a-while thing. And I agree with you. If they start doing it every 5 or 6 months, that will become overkill too. Like, that should really be like a once-a-year thing as well. So I definitely agree with you on that, Curtis Butler. They've established it, and I think they should not do another one until we have an actual full crowd to witness it. And they should do the next one on pay-per-view, in my opinion. So yeah, to answer Johnny Boy's question, no, I'm not interested in seeing Triple H wrestle again. I think he's had his time, and unless you have the absolute perfect storyline, I think I've seen enough of Triple H in the ring. Maybe one more match under the right circumstances, but I would do a one-on-one match. If Triple H was going to wrestle, I would do a singles match. I would not put him in with Stephanie or do a tag match with Shawn or something silly like that. Just Triple H one-on-one, right circumstances, right opponent, right storyline. But yeah, I would not do a tag match. But I would like to see The Fiend and Alexa team up at some point. But find a better power couple for them to go against. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you follow No DQ on social media and on Twitch at NoDQDOTCOM. Stay tuned for the No DQ review, Smackdown, and other videos. Thank you guys so much again. I appreciate it. Stay positive, be safe, and I will see you all next time.